Hi guys, welcome back to At Home with Holly. My name's Holly and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. Today is the end of the week. I'm just gonna kind of take you through all the things that I did this week. This week was the prep week because we are picking up chicks. We are picking up chickens and turkeys. We're picking up layers and meat turkeys on Monday. So I had to get their homes situated and prepared and make sure I have all the things I need. And then I also went ahead and started my last round of seeds. These are things that I could have, and I still might start outside, but they're also things that I can start inside. I've tried direct sowing, and I've also tried just starting these things. These are things that don't like the roots to be messed with, like melons, cucumbers, that kind of stuff. I have started them both ways, and I have a very healthy bird population that really enjoys to pluck the seeds after I plant them. So I went ahead and started those in pots. I'm going to take you guys with me for building and setting up brooders and also planting our last round until fall garden because we'll be planting more of that stuff. So I'm so glad that you guys are here. Let's get started. So this week was an interesting week. I tweaked my back pretty badly, so I'm doing much better now. But so this week, my original plans were to get a lot of like perennial things planted outside, and I just had to say, nope, not this week. We are going to do all the things that I can do standing up. So I just kind of had to pivot because getting up and down is tricky. But once I'm up, I am up and I can keep it rolling. So what I did was I filled all of my little pots with my Pro Mix, and I got it pre-moistened, and then I got my seeds all separated and ready to go. Actually, first what I did was I pre-moistened the soil, and then I went ahead and put labels so that I knew how many of each plant I was planting. Most of the things that we're planting today are things that are going to go on the trellis, so I had to kind of be thoughtful of how many on each side of the trellis and all that kind of stuff. The other thing that we are planting today are sunflowers, though, so that's fun. We actually got some Sunflower Steve, sunflowers, the Marley, and the Van Gogh mix. So we're going to be planting those as well. So I pre-moistened our Pro Mix, and I filled up the containers with soil and pre-moistened the Pro Mix, and then I also pre-labeled all of the containers. That way there wasn't any chance that I would miss any of the ones that we needed to get done. Now, without fail, even though I am pretty good about labeling and try really hard to make sure that whatever I label stays, the label stays with the correct thing. You know, sometimes there are some mistakes where I end up putting stuff out in the garden and I think that is not what that label says. So I am trying really hard to pre-label, double check, always make sure that I'm not mixing stuff up and keeping it as organized as I can so that if I love something, I can think, okay, I really love that. I want to plant more of that. Or, you know, I didn't really care for that. I don't think I'm going to plant that anymore. So labeling is important for all kinds of reasons. So the first thing we're going to be planting is the Sunflower Van Gogh, and then our Marley mix from our Sunflower Steve. Sunflowers, I love Sunflower Steve and what he's doing with sunflowers and the kind of like fuzzy teddy bear variety sunflowers that he has. I love his story and what he's doing and all the things. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure to go to sunflowersteve.com and do a little bit of interesting research on what he's up to. And then the next thing we're going to plant is our cucumbers. So I did the long English style cucumber, the unagi, and then I did the honey rock cantaloupe. I like the personal size cantaloupes and melons because that way I can just have a personal serving. It's just my daughter and I, so I don't need the 20-pound ones. I just need the ones that are, you know, a little bit larger than a softball size, and that's kind of our favorite size. And then we have the Minnesota midget cantaloupe. We have the Kajari melon, which it looks like a honeydew, but it tastes like a cantaloupe. So I love that one. This was a hybrid cantaloupe that I got from Johnny's. The next one is a hybrid watermelon. So I believe it's a yellow watermelon. I might have gotten those mixed up, but those last two were a hybrid cantaloupe and a hybrid melon. And then Sweet Passion is our absolute favorite personal size melon that we've grown so far. So I love that one. It is super, super sweet, more sweet than anything I've ever had from any farmer's market or grocery store or anything like that. So we love the Sweet Passion. And then the last one that we're growing is a hybrid zucchini. I don't grow zucchini every year, but every few years I do grow at least one plant, and I shred it and freeze it because my daughter really loves chocolate chip zucchini. chocolate chip zucchini muffins are one of her favorite breakfast items. So I love having frozen zucchini shredded and ready to go. So I'm not a huge zucchini by itself person, but I do like shredding it and using it in things. So after I got all the seeds put where they needed to go, then I went ahead and pushed them down into the soil, just not very deep, just pretty shallow there. And then I went ahead and used my sprayer to make sure that we watered them in really well to remove all the air pockets and get them set up for a successful growing time. And then we went ahead and put it on the heat mat, and I switched over to our outside, well, not outside, but my garage project. So like I said, we got laying chickens, and then I also have meat turkeys. And then in a few weeks, we're going to be picking up meat chickens. And so although I have a cute little brooder that's like a little red barn, rent-a-coop, prefab brooder, I also needed a second one for the turkeys, and I wasn't sure how big they were going to get, how fast they were going to get. So I actually made two of them, two different sizes. So I cut the top using my Sawzall. I cut the top lid off, and then I went ahead and had to decide whether I wanted to do the 3-foot or the 2-foot wide section of the hardware cloth. And so after I cut off the lid, then I went ahead and drilled holes all along the edge on the lid, and I cut out a piece of hardware cloth to fit each of those lids. And then I just took some zip ties. There's tons of ways to do this, but you can do metal, wire, you can do all kinds of things. But the easiest and the quickest thing for me to do, especially since I couldn't really bend over and dig through my tool bins and do stuff since I was still a little bit tender and sore, was just to use the zip ties to fasten it. So I went ahead and drilled the holes all the way around, and then took my pre-cut piece of hardware cloth and attached it to the top. And this was super easy. I've seen a lot of people do this online, and I thought that's super smart. I actually have like a sifter that I used with 2x4s. I made like a rectangle, and it's covered in hardware cloth, and I use that to sift stuff. And the first year that we had chicks, I actually just threw that whole thing on top of the brooder, but it didn't fit perfectly. It was heavy. My daughter had trouble lifting it on and off. And so this was much easier. It kind of looks a little more finished and compact. So once I got them all attached with the zip ties, I went ahead and cut off the ends that were sticking up, and it was ready to go. Then all I had to do was add the heating plate, some food, and water, and it was ready to go for our turkeys and also for our meat chickens, because when they come, I'm going to need to split them in between these two containers for sure. So although I didn't need both of them this weekend, I did need both of them long term. And so since I had all the tools out, I decided to go ahead and just finish it up. And this is what it looks like when it has the water and feeder and the heat plate ready to go for the turkeys. So that's going to do it for me, you guys. I want to thank you guys so much for all the likes and the comments and the shares. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. We have a whole lot more growing and building projects and chickens and turkeys, which is new this year, and gardening and growing and preserving to do. I can't wait to see you guys next time. Thank you so much. Bye, my friends.